some quick thoughts on Washington. And I wanted to talk about this aspect too, because I've seen a lot of questions about it from Michigan fans in the last couple of days. It's like, hey, this is a unique year where the championship game is played just 1 week after the bowl games because they wanted to keep it on that Monday night. New Year's Day falls on the Monday night. Rose Bowl has to be played on New Year's Day per the contracts and the tradition, and I'm glad it was. But you have less than a week from the time you end there, pretty much until the time you kick off in the national title game. How are they going to be focused, especially with all the travel? To me, one, it is a challenge, and I think these coaches understand that. But two, Michigan is pretty uniquely qualified for this because you beat Ohio State the last 3 years. I mean, that's as emotionally high as it gets, but you have to regroup and play in the Big Ten championship game. They've been able to successfully do that and be focused in those games the last three. So I think you draw on that experience, but what do you think the team, and you got to get healthy too. A couple guys banged up, and obviously guys are a little bit sore. I don't know that you got to practice all that much other than special teams at this point. You go through practice. I'm talking about physical, physicality here, but you stay crisp. But man, I think this team will be ready to go.
Yeah, I assume this is a mostly walkthrough week for them. Maybe they have a day in shells somewhere, whether it be once they're in Houston, whether I don't know. We don't know exactly what that schedule looks like other than they will be leaving for Houston. I think they arrive around 4 o'clock local time on Friday, and then they'll spend the next few days there. Obviously, it's not quite the same like a bowl prep week where you're there all week and you have events to do. To my knowledge, there's no special events for them. It's get to Houston, it's get settled in, it's prepare, and then it's play this game on Monday night. And if they win, they'll have the champions press conference there on Tuesday morning. But, for me, again, it's talk about quick turnarounds. Maybe they give John Beilein a call. He was a guy that seemed adept at scouting on a quick turnaround. But you have to think, going into the playoff, you knew who your opponent could possibly be. Probably do a little bit of intel scouting work on both Washington and Texas.
And you have analysts to do that. Yeah.
Yes. You have a vast network of analysts that are able to do that.
Not as vast as Alabama, but yeah.
Well, I don't know. They have this game film from Monday night to watch. They will, yeah. So again, I don't know what the prep plan looks like. It's kind of interesting to me. Both teams kind of made cross-country trips for their respective bowl games. Both teams now traveled back home, and now both teams will travel back across the country down to Texas to make. And so both teams have to deal with that. Who does that favor? I tend to believe that probably favors Michigan, ? Just because they do have this experience now of having played in the college football playoff over the last few years. But we'll see. I mean, that's all discussion fodder right now. We'll see what happens on Monday night. But I don't think that that's the schedule as we know it heading into this weekend. So we'll get to see a bit of practice on Saturday afternoon. Head coaches will talk on Sunday, and then it's game day already come Monday.
Yeah, it's not like a bowl trip where they're out there, going to Disneyland and playing Top Golf and stuff like that. You're out there for a shorter amount of time, and it is not that the last games weren't huge, but it's a much more of a business trip type of thing. I also think they can draw on Ohio State too. The fact that I asked Jesse Minter this the week leading into the Iowa game there in the Big Ten championship, but how much is this defense built to beat Ohio State? And he said, it's kind of how Mike McDonald built it. And, it's kind of also probably why Jim Harbaugh hired him. And it's why Jim Harbaugh hired Jesse Minter. He talked about in his interview process how Jim Harbaugh asked him how he would stop Ohio State, and he had to present that plan. Well, Washington, not the same, is very similar in that you have dangerous weapons on the outside. I mean, think of that 2021 team that Michigan played. I know that was McDonald, not Minter, but Mason Graham wasn't here either, and he was saying that they're kind of drawing on that as well. You got weapons on the outside, an elite quarterback. It was Stroud at the time. This time, Michael Penix for Washington. I think that Michigan is built to kind of defend this. Now, it's easier said than done because this is an elite team. And again, it's kind of one of those coin flip games. But I also think that experience can help them as well. A couple notes, too, from we got to talk to the head coaches yesterday on a teleconference as well as a few key players. The Dylan Johnson thing for Washington, is really interesting because he went down at the end of the game there. Obviously, his injury timeout, stopping the clock, giving Texas a chance to come down and score there at the end. Just an insane turn of events. And they had a couple shots at the end zone. But he's been dealing with a foot injury for a while as well, potentially broken foot. I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to give it a go, but I don't think how I don't know how effective he's going to be. And he's really the only guy that's run the football for them this year. He's over 1,000 yards. Nobody else over 200 yards for Washington. So that could be a big loss. And so that's interesting. And I think, AB, you tweeted it yesterday saying, like, this reads like Blake Corum's going to play against Ohio State, when Kalen DeBoer said that Dylan Johnson, or he expects Dylan Johnson to play. I agree. I think that that's going to be a big loss for them if he's not going to be effective. And it's hard to say at this point that he's going to. He got carted off the field just a couple days ago.
It is crazy to think. And DeBoer said that this has been something that's been nagging with him for a few months. But again, the fact that you do have a guy, the optics of a guy that was carted off the field and then returns to play less than 6 or 7 days later. I mean, stranger things have happened, certainly. I don't want to say it's wishful thinking because I don't know what his medical chart looks like, but if Dylan Johnson isn't available to Washington in this game, like that's huge advantage towards Michigan. I know they like the other guys that they have, but I forget the two gentlemen's names. I have to apologize, but they only have a combined, I think, 72 carries on the year. So, that helps. I mean, again, Washington is going to rack up yards. They're going to score. Michigan fans just need to get that in their head right now. It's probably going to be frustrating at times. But if you're able to make them completely one-dimensional, then that is advantage Michigan. And the more they drop back, the more chances you have for Jesse Minter to scheme something up for those guys to get back there to beat that offensive line. But yeah, to me, if Dylan Johnson doesn't play in this game, that's a huge deal for Washington. And Michael Penix in that passing game is good enough to do it on their own anyways. And I do think that this does kind of harken back to 2021 Ohio State in terms of what Washington is. So you can draw on that. And you have guys on this team that have played defense in that game before. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I'll get a little better of idea of what Washington brings to the table over these next few days as we put our game package together. But yeah, that's potentially, I won't say game swinging, but potentially a huge loss for Washington if he's not able to go. And I do think that it feels like wishful thinking.
Yeah, and even with Dylan Johnson against Texas, which has a comparable front seven to Michigan, they only rushed for 3.3 yards per carry, 102 yards on 31 rushes. And, Texas had to kind of throw the football there. The other side, in all these games against teams that have the level of talent that Michigan does, or at least comparable, Oregon twice, Texas as well, those teams have been able to run the football on Washington. So I think Michigan could have the advantage on both sides in the run game. And if you avoid allowing big plays, then I think that could be huge for the Wolverines.